Well, hello. Just waiting a couple of seconds to let people join, and then we'll get started. Okay. So 5 o'clock. Thank you very much for joining this afternoon session for the webinar about how to widen your mid-funnel and content that converts. I'm Matthew Stibber, I'm founder and CEO at Articulate Marketing, and I'll be running through this. So without any further ado, let's get started. Where am I coming from? Well, I run this agency, Articulate Marketing, and we've been doing these things, brand strategy, websites, copywriting, and automation and AI using HubSpot for several decades, almost 25 years now. So this is the experience I'm bringing to this question. We'll be talking a little bit about how things have changed over that time and what the mid-funnel means today. If you would like our help, if you'd like some free, no BS chat with me about your particular mid-funnel challenges or anything else that we talk about, I'd be delighted to set up a call. You can book that using articulatemarketing.com/meet. That's my calendar link. When you look at the PDF of the slides, that button will work and that will take you to the page as well. So very happy to offer that as a follow-up. If you've been kind enough to show up today, you've earned it. If you want it, I'd love to talk to you. There's no live chat on this. It is happening live, but there's no live chat for various reasons. So if you have any questions for me, email me, matthew@articulatemarketing.com. Love to hear from you. I can see more people coming in, so welcome. We're coming to the details of the webinar, how to widen your mid-funnel, momentarily. One last sort of parish notice. There's a lot more webinars in the pipeline between now and Christmas. These are the main ones. There's possibly one or two more as well. Go to articulatemarketing.com/webinars and have a look and see what tickles your fancy. If you're here or you're watching this, you're going to get emailed with this stuff as well. Some of these webinars are not yet live on the index page, but the next one, the Martech Tools Census, is. So let's come to discussion of the mid-funnel, why it matters and why things have changed and why marketers and B2B companies need to change their approach. So what is the mid-funnel? So my definition of it as a working definition is where awareness turns into evaluation. It's a stage along the buyer's journey that hasn't crystallized in a sales conversation, but isn't just a sort of random Google search and a bit of top of funnel sort of trying to understand my pain points. It's where our buyers are actively researching solutions, comparing vendors and building an internal consensus to spend money and to make a change. And so the marketer's goal at this stage is to educate, nurture and position the brand as a safe, smart choice. And that's an interesting and important challenge, made more complicated by changes in the industry and changes in the social media and SEO landscape. So when I started doing inbound marketing 20 years ago and started talking about and to HubSpot 15 years ago, you would write some blog posts and they would be found by Google, and then you'd get some organic traffic, and then you'd have a CTA and they'd click on the CTA and they'd go to a landing page and fill in a form, and then you'd have a contact record in your database and you'd start phoning them, and that was the entire journey. Well, zero-click search because of AI has made that much less likely. People are seeing big drop-offs in their organic traffic because people are just asking questions on Google and getting AI mode or AI overview answers, or they're asking questions on ChatGPT. And so the traffic that you do get is typically much more qualified, much more in that mid-funnel place, and the kind of content you need is more aimed at them at that stage than getting Google to send free organic traffic. Related to that is Cory Doctorow's phrase, the enshittification of everything. But social media has also gone through the same journey where they're trying to charge people for clicks and traffic. So you can try very hard on social media, but unless you are basically a social media personality and you're generating traffic for the social media company, which some people do more in B2C, LinkedIn and and Twitter and Facebook, they want to charge you, and they will, they'll take as much money as you want to give them for traffic and links, and that can work as a business model. It's online advertising, but you can't just go on and hope to build a social audience and have a lot of people. They will limit your ability to do that. Also, there's a trend, I think, now with top of funnel content where things you used to put behind a landing page and gate is now better served as free-to-air content that AI tools and Google can spider and search, in the hope that you get some citations and links and reputation building. There are some ways in which you can still do lead capture, lead acquisition with it, but that sort of top of funnel lead capture is arguably going away too. Okay, my screen's just come back there. And lastly, just the tidal wave of content marketing and email marketing over the last few years means that people are much warier, much less engaged with it. And also in the economic situation, economic climate we have now, deals are taking longer. There's more delayed dither and indecision. There's more self-service. There's more research going into it, more stakeholders. It's more complicated. And people are less willing to just go straight into the sales stage of the conversation, the bottom of the funnel. So this mid-funnel is becoming more important. It's widening. People need to do more work there. And buyers are coming into websites more often at that stage looking for that sort of content. So you have to react to this. And one of the ways that you need to react is focusing on positioning, differentiation, and education. You need to be clearly signposting the next best step, which might be a sales conversation, but it might also be a self-service demo. It might be a pricing calculator. It might be a carefully constructed bottom of funnel offer like our marketing strategy session. And you've also got to be mindful that the person visiting your website might not be the ultimate buyer or budget holder. They might be researching, and your job is to help turn that person into your advocate and give them the information they need to influence buying decisions in your favor. And if they are the ultimate decision maker, they're probably at that stage looking for validation of that decision before they finally commit to it. So content that is relevant, useful, and interesting, and not sort of spammy AI written drivel, stuff that surfaces human evidence, human reality. We'll talk a little bit about what this looks like in practice. The Google phrase EEAT, expertise, experience, authority, and trustworthiness, original insights, original data, research. This works well for people when you are trying to position and differentiate your company and educate visitors about your services and products. It's been true that all these things matter with content marketing and always have, and almost certainly always will, but particularly at the mid-funnel. The rest of this webinar is about positive examples of good things to do, but I just wanted to mention some of the bad things to avoid. So if you're aware of Simon Sinek and his concept of start with why, too many B2B tech companies in all sectors start with the what. This is what we do. This is our product. This is our technology. This is our thing. And not the benefit or outcomes that it delivers or the problems that it solves. The why. This is missing. And of course, that's very easy to do because you're very familiar with your products and services. You want to talk about them. You want to maybe differentiate from people who have very similar products and services. But visitors want you to talk about their issues in their language. The man in the mirror problem is another thing that we've talked about at Articulate for a long time, and there's an article of that name on the website, and I've done webinars about it. But basically, a lot of tech companies are started by technologists and run by techies, and they think that if they can communicate the technical virtues of their product to people like them, that's enough to sell. And it's an assumption that they are actually going to be talking to other techies. And sometimes that is important, but sometimes the people who hold the budgets and own the pain are not techies. And sometimes you can end up in the mid-funnel talking to people with the same background, same technology interests, and there's all kinds of other biases that come into this. And that can actually mean you're engaging at a lower level of decision making, or you're communicating the wrong things. And the last thing I just would want to highlight at this stage as a failure mode is the attempt to fight fire with fire. If AI is taking away my top of funnel traffic and Google traffic, I'm going to just do more blog posts, and I'm going to automate more emails, and I'm going to send more stuff, and I'm going to do, and sort of flooding the zone with AI slop in order to sort of beat the numbers, I think is an example of what Blair Enns calls misautomation. It's just using it for the wrong purposes, and you really want to try to guard against that in our view. Okay, so let's talk about some positive things. Let's give some positive examples of what does work in the mid-funnel. Well, it wouldn't come as any surprise to anyone watching this that we think webinars are really important, because you're talking about human conversation. It's me here doing this live now at 5:10 on a Wednesday afternoon, and you get a chance to experience what it might be like to work with Articulate. Hopefully you're getting some expertise and some authority and some experience out of this. And in our experience at Articulate, looking at the webinars that we've done, out of the thousands of people over the years that have signed up for our webinars, about a third are sales qualified or better. And that is a much better ratio than the tens of thousands of people who have signed up for our top of funnel content, of whom only a very small proportion are sales qualified or better. So webinars really work in the mid funnel if they're good, relevant, useful, and interesting. And the nice thing about webinars is you can then turn them into other things like blog posts and social media and sales outreach and things like that. Flagship reports is another thing that over the last year and a half, 2 years, we've been investing in for Articulate and also rolling out for clients. And what a flagship report means for us is, what we're trying to do is do some research about either desk research, like we might look at 300 websites in the health tech sector and look at what good ones have in common and what best practices are. So there's some actual laborious research going in there. Or for example, with the Black Dot Solutions OSINT Benchmark 2025, we did a form-based survey of around 200 OSINT practitioners, and they answered a number of questions about their practice and their work, which we then are in the process now of analysing and compiling into a written report. The people who submitted those surveys got an instant hot take of, well, you answered these questions and the other people answered these questions, and we'll send them the actual analysis and thought the work that we've done with that. So you get two bites of the cherry. You get one sort of bit of lead capture when they fill in the form and some value for them, and you get another bit of lead capture and engagement when you actually send out the final report. We're also doing, for example, for Clover, a data operations maturity report, and this is a good thing, but it's not just a 1,500 word blog post behind a landing page. There's original research, there's some depth, there's some consideration, and we're trying to tell people things that are relevant and useful to their world to establish credibility and thought leadership, as well as a bit of lead capture, a little bit of understanding the market. Another thing that we are doing a lot more of at Articulate for ourselves, a little bit, we dabbled in podcasting, but a lot more for our clients, which is why we're not doing them as much as we would like for Articulate. So I host a couple of podcasts for two clients, the From the Source podcast for Black Dot and Behind the Data for Clover. So they're in areas that I'm sort of interested in, sort of semi-reasonably interesting, able to interview people. But we've also set up and kind of producer support a couple of other podcasts for clients, Michelmersh and Causeway, where we're sort of basically helping them host and run theirs, but we're doing the behind the scenes stuff. And what this does is, people increasingly distrust salespeople, politicians and marketers. I mean, we're not really in the most sort of popular, trustworthy area. And sadly, indeed, there's a growing distrust of expertise generally. But people do trust voices like their own. If they see people who are doing the same jobs, have the same job titles, and there's not an obvious commercial shove behind it, that's quite credible. So what these podcasts do is allow the companies to talk to potential customers and actual customers about their issues in their language in a way that is credible and interesting and trustworthy and expert. And there's a sort of halo effect then for the products and services. So this has been very successful. And also, again, you get to repurpose that content with blogification and social media and so on. So it's a time efficient way of doing content generation. I like it very much when B2B and technology companies can surface the human benefit. If you can talk to people about people, that has a lot of credibility. So this is a company that helps recruit people into a medical, it's 5 o'clock on a Wednesday and my brain's gone to jelly, medical trials. But it's actually telling their story a little bit, and I picked this up when I was preparing this earlier. I thought this was a really nice example. If you can show the people side of it, and one of Articulate's mission statements is we want to help our clients help millions of people, and we'd love to zoom in on some of those end client stories like this. So real human stories are nice. The slightly more generic version of that is case studies, where you're talking about what you did and how it helped. I really like these case studies that we're writing for Searchpilot that does SEO testing. What we're trying to do is tell a little bit of a story about how SEO testing it has a role and what the benefits are. So it's a little bit educational. It's not just, hey, we doubled this company's sales or something. And it has the benefit of, they're talking to Flight Centre and case studies about Marks and Spencer and things. So they're quite familiar names. So that's also a sort of social proof or a customer proof. And you can see quotes here: uplifted revenues by 6 million, grew traffic by 20-something%. This is these are good quality case studies. That said, I've spent the last 20 years desperately trying to get away from the, problem, solution, benefits format of traditional case studies and make them a bit more editorially interesting. So this is an area of ongoing work, I think. The next thing that is important in the mid-funnel is to make sure that the industry pages that you have, the content that you have, is clearly communicating to people about what you do in language and terms that they understand apply to them. So we spent a lot of work, for example, with this company Causeway.com, working on their information architecture. So translating their set of services, their software products, and talking about, well, how would somebody in this sector or that sector describe themselves? How would they recognize that? So instead of going, we've got product X and product Y and product Z, the menu on the site goes, we help people with supply chain, electronic invoicing, carbon reporting. So you can see, okay, I've got a problem in this sort of space and I want this sort of solution. And then it takes you to a page that describes the product and gives you the product name. It's very reader specific and it's very reader language, which I think is important. Related to that, and it applies to the copy across the whole site, I think having clear tone of voice guidelines that communicate carefully in the sort of the right way for your audience, so writing in a format or a language that they're used to reading. Typically we would say to people, well, your audience is, what do they read? What kind of magazines, newspapers, websites? Let's write like that, because that's what they're used to seeing. But also messaging platforms, messaging guidelines, kind of copy, so that you can communicate the right kinds of issues and talk about the right kind of stuff. And I love this work that we did for Doctor Care Anywhere, that just sort of tells the visitor, in this case B2C part of their business, exactly what they're getting and kind of what the benefit is. We did an interview last year for what would have been one of the first episodes of the Articulate podcast with Chris O'Riordan, who's a friend of Articulate's, runs Firestarter, and he talks about 5 yellow boxes. And if you haven't got this absolutely nailed down and communicated on your website, your mid-funnel is going to collapse. So the 5 yellow boxes are, fundamentally, as a business, we do this. The type of people or companies we work with are like this. They typically have these kinds of issues or problems or pain points, which we solve by doing these kinds of things, and typically working with us looks like this. It costs this much. It's this kind of engagement model. And it sounds like it's really straightforward. Actually, it's really quite hard. There's a lot of challenge in pinning it down and communicating it consistently. Another piece of content format that works really well in the mid-funnel is how to do it guides, and I love this example from the Igor brand naming company. I mean, I've read this. This is the guide that I read when I came up with Articulate and my other business, Turbine. It's a really, really good guide. It tells you how to do evocative naming. Fine. What it also communicates quite subtly is we are experts in what we're talking about. We really know because we wrote the book on it, and they're on version 11 of this guide, I think. You can just go and download it as a PDF. And it's kind of complicated. It takes quite a lot of work. You can't just sort of wake up and do good naming. You have to put the miles in, right? So you might want to hire us to help you. Now, not everyone who downloads the Igor naming guide is going to hire Igor to do their naming. But you might be in the market for a naming consultancy and download that and go, do you know what? I like these guys. They know what they're doing. I'm going to talk to them. So it has the it has that educational positioning and differentiating element to it. And you've also highlighted the benefit that you provide, which is we can take away a lot of the hard work for you. You kind of need to answer people's sales related questions more explicitly in the mid funnel now than you used to. If people aren't picking up the phone to talk to salespeople as early as they used to, they are doing their own research, and also they're using ChatGPT and other tools to do their research. Surfacing this information so that they can find it, so that AI tools can find it, is really important. So this is a website we built recently for Gentian.io, and it has a very extensive FAQs page. I've just screenshotted a bit of it, but there's quite a lot more FAQs on here, and this is a way of communicating those sorts of questions, answers to those sorts of questions. For Articulate, what we try and do is whenever we get asked a complex, nuanced question in the sales process, like what's the ROI of a website, or why should I hire an agency when I'm thinking of hiring a marketing junior, or what's the why should I choose HubSpot for my website, not WordPress? What we try and do is go write an article about it, so that the next time we get asked that question, we can say, that's a really good question. We already thought about that. Here was the answer. So we're trying very hard to do that consistently, and that drives a lot of our blogging now, whereas in the past we would write blogs that were deliberately trying to answer SEO questions to drive organic website traffic. Now we're trying to write answers to questions that come up in the sales process to support people who are coming through the sales process at various stages. I think making content hubs more useful for mid-funnel so that they can go and find answers to their questions and their problems. So, and I just wanted to share an observation that I've made. And once you've picked this up, you won't be able to look at a content hub without observing it, which is most content hubs are broken down into different content types. So here are all our webinars, here are all our blog posts, here are all our podcasts, here are all our white papers, here are all our case studies, right? Broken out into content types, which, if you think about it, makes as much sense as going to the department store and here's a section of all the products made out of wood, and here's a section of all the products made out of plastic, and here's a section out of all the products made out of metal, or here's everything that's powered by electricity, and here's everything that's not. It's a failure to help the user find things that they need. So we're trying, and we have to take this medicine for Articulate. We're working on it, but we're trying to reconfigure resource hubs around questions and challenges and problems and needs and themes, rather than blog posts, case studies, and white papers. And we sort of partially succeeded with Causeway. I think we succeeded very well at the time. But you can go in there and you can say, I want to see all the content for construction companies that's about HR, and it will have those, the little side things here will actually help you narrow down, and it will categorize, it will include in that all the different types of content, and they have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of blog posts and webinars and white papers and podcasts and things. It collates all of that using a fairly clever database that we built. So make content hubs more useful. Another thing that we're working on for Causeway is interactive demos. So You rock up and you may not want to talk to a salesperson to book a demo. You may not be ready to do that. You may be still researching. So what this allows you to do is answer a few questions. I'm interested in this kind of product and I have these kind of goals. And it then curates out of a library of videos, short little videos, a sequence of 3-4 minute videos. If you watch the first one, the second one, the third one, it's going to answer your questions and give you a little bit of a self-service focused demo. Does have a little bit of lead capture. You need to fill in a little form to get access to it, but it's a less intrusive, less demanding way of getting a demo than booking a sales call. And by the way, this is actually really efficient for sales teams because they need to be spending all their time focused on high quality leads that are more likely to convert. And this also has a benefit of sort of eliminating some tire kickers, right? And it also has the benefit of people who do then click through this to get a actual live demo are better qualified, they ask better questions, they're better informed. So it works, it saves people time and it works very well. A lot of what has to happen in the mid-funnel now is surfacing information that previously was buried in sales decks and sales proposals and product data sheets and things like that, that typically you had to talk to somebody about. So I'm spending a lot of time at the moment rewiring or rebuilding the house where I live, and kind of running cable runs into sort of old walls and through conduits out to outbuildings and things. And it's very important for me that I can find compatible equipment. So particularly at the moment I need to do fiber optic networking out to a couple of outbuildings, including this one, because I want to run them underground next to electric cables. Okay, personal note, doesn't matter about that, but I found that Ubiquiti's website is really good at helping me find the exact right switches, the cheapest switch that has a fiber optic port in it, this one, and also checking that one of the other switches I've got has the right fiber optic port, and I can just relocate it. Making sure that information is available is really important. I don't want to talk to a salesperson to ask those questions, but and it may be the case that you've got product information and data that you need to share that isn't being shared at the moment, or isn't being shared in a convenient way, or isn't being shared in a way that ChatGPT and other LLMs can get at, meaning it's not on a maybe it's gated or private or something. It's a surface that. Almost the penultimate slide now, but I think one of the things that almost all B2B business websites fail on, and one of the highest priorities for people in the middle funnel, is how much is it going to cost me? That's the kind of major research question. And I did quite a lot of research for one of our clients on their competitors to see how they presented pricing information. And a surprising number of sites have a pricing page, and you click on it and it says we've got good, better, best pricing. Click here to talk to sales to get a price. Well, that's not a pricing page. It's just actually I felt if I had been a potential customer for those services, I'd be quite cross, and I probably would assume that either I was going to be negotiated with, or I was going to be oversold, or it was going to be a painful experience like buying a second-hand car or something. So I think it's really important to give clear price guidance, and if you can't give an exact price, and it's not always possible, Norman Nielsen Group, who are the gurus of usability on websites, say give a starting price, or give an indicative price, or a typical price, something that allows people to rule you in or out, or at least sets the right frame, puts you in the right ballpark. So this screenshot is from their website. So they're drinking their own champagne, and the different tiers of this particular service start at a certain amount of money, and the top tier starts at $100,000, which is not a trivial amount of money. So they're being very clear about it, and if you need that service, that's what it's going to cost. And if you can't afford it, you either go down a tier and get what you can afford, or you find another way of doing it. In all those cases, you're treating the visitor with respect, you're helping them solve their problems and understand their choices better, and you're reducing the amount of time your salespeople have to waste on people who are not well qualified. So, clear pricing. Now, I know I'm sitting in a glass house throwing stones about this, but there is pricing information coming to Articulate's website this side of Christmas. Okay, the last sort of recommendation is, and this is related to the pricing question, because one of the objections we have whenever I make this recommendation to people during a strategy project is, well, our pricing is really complicated or it's really difficult to explain. Well, you can do what Clover did, what we did for Clover, for Clover, with their pricing calculator, is actually communicate the difference, the benefit of how your pricing model works, and turn it into a bit of a virtue. So Clover does ETL software, well, kind of data pipelines and things. And they charge per core and per developer, rather than per piece of data that moves through the pipeline, which a lot of SaaS competitors do. So it's a bit of a difference between paying an annual water rate bill per house or being charged per flush. And this calculator we built, it took a long time, a lot of iteration and discussion and thought. Not only gives you some indicative pricing, starts at, it doesn't tell you the exact price for various reasons, but also how that pricing is calculated and kind of what the benefits are. So we're communicating in these little text boxes very clearly, this is not like those other things. And you can adjust that and you can play around with the pricing and see what, almost to reverse engineer the service to the price you want to pay. So it looks relatively simple. It looks like a regular pricing calculator, but actually it's a differentiation, education, and positioning tool. Okay, so all of this is very fresh and important to me because we're doing all of this for Articulate as well. And I'm trying very hard to talk to you about what we believe is important, what we're doing for clients, and our own changes. And we've seen a steady decline over the last 3 or 4 years in our organic traffic and our top of funnel lead capture, I think, like a lot of businesses. But we're seeing a lot of success with webinars. We're seeing a lot of success with this more sort of targeted flagship content, and we're trying to implement this. Our mission is almost, historically, we've been really focused on the top of the funnel, and right now, I think 70-80% of our marketing is focused on this mid-funnel piece. So we're trying to follow our own advice here. So if you have any questions about any of this, do get in touch. Email me, book a session. I can, as you can tell, bore for England about it, but I have opinions and I'm happy to look at what you're doing and discuss it. Do sign up for more webinars if you find this one interesting. Slightly over time, so I'm going to stop talking now, but thank you very much for joining me today, and I hope you found that useful. Thank you.